Welcome to the Get Out In It podcast, keeping our mental and physical well-being balanced by heading out into nature and doing stuff.
The activity isn't important. Walk, run, hike, bike, whatever it is, just find something you enjoy and get out in it. The point of this podcast is to show how ordinary people can achieve extraordinary levels of health and fitness.
Out here, we'll share informal, inclusive advice for anyone trying to improve their mental and physical well-being, based on our own experiences and professional knowledge from our special guests.
So let's lace up and get out in it.
And here we are. Welcome to episode 21. And what a week it has been. How are you, Maria Herring?
Well, surprisingly, I'm very well, considering this has been the first week that I've been fully back at work, which I thought was going to be quite a stressful time, but it's actually fine. I'm doing well. How are you, James Bale?
Yeah, I was going to say, I maybe wasn't going to say publicly, but now you've given me the in. I am now going to say it publicly. I haven't noticed the dip in mood that we often get at the start of a new term.
No, maybe it's because I had quite a cool race at the start of term, which took up quite a lot of brain power. Maybe it's because I organized my work timetable so that not everybody started at the same time. So I had a kind of softly approach to the start of term. I don't know, but yes, it's good. It's been a good couple of weeks.
And you've restructured your weeks slightly, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, my school years change every year. They're never the same because obviously it depends on when the kids or adults are free for English lessons. So yeah, my work year changes every year. And you?
And how am I? Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's ever improving. It's been a fairly busy week. Lots of new opportunities are presenting themselves at the moment. So I'm just trying to juggle those opportunities into a neat little place in my life. And also carry on with my training and my rehab. So yeah, it's not too bad. Thank you very much for asking. So first question, obviously, of every podcast is, what have you done this week to get out in it?
Got out in it. I did something wicked this week to get out in it. Do you want to hear what it was?
I do.
I have started training other women to do sport. Well, I'm not going to call it sports anymore. To do activities and movements in the park.
Yeah, you have inherited a sports in the park session, haven't you? Which is now the sports in the park brought to you by Get Out in It. And how's it going? How is that little crew taking to your coaching?
Well, I don't know. Well, I do know, actually. They gave me a lot of love in our little WhatsApp group after the session this morning, which was really cute. And I really appreciate that because, funnily enough, I was shitting my pants. Tony is a tough act to follow because Tony's been our coach since 2020. And yeah, he's a really good coach and he knows what he's doing and he's professional. I'm just a very passionate amateur. So it was a tough act to follow. And last night I was really nervous and I couldn't sleep. Couldn't sleep because I was nervous. But yeah, it was a really good fun.
Follow that act you have. And by all accounts, it went very well.
Yeah. I think so. I think the girls, the ladies enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. So yeah, I think it's going to be good fun. It's going to be good fun. I'm going to keep it entertaining, keep it fun, keep it quite ludique, keep it quite playful. So yeah. Fun. So that was my big main get out. And what else did I do? I did a massive fuck off run on Sunday.
How far did you go?
Massive fuck off run. I did 30 Ks. It was quite far.
That's a big day out, eh?
It was a really big day out. It was it was about 4 hours or maybe a little over 4 hours, but it was a very big day out. And I managed to get in about just under 1,000 meters of elevation as well. So I'm getting my legs used to the climbs in preparation for the UTBV in 3 weeks now. 4 weeks? 3 weeks? 4 weeks?
Yeah.
3.
It is 3 weeks tomorrow.
Fuck
Yeah,
me.
so this is as you build up, having done your August challenge of 10K a day, you're shifting your training over to build up for the 80K. And if we're if
Yeah.
we're if we're honest, your taper starts pretty much after next weekend's run. So you're going to do a 2 week taper down
Yeah.
for that.
I've only got yeah, because I've only got two long runs left now, haven't I? I've got this
Yeah.
one tomorrow. The one this one on Sunday of 35K. And then my last long run is 40K.
And then it'll be a 2 week taper down to the race. But your fitness is there, you are nice and prepared, you're ready to go.
Yeah, I hope so. I I have anxiety dreams that I DNF.
Well, I mean, in an ideal world, that doesn't happen. You take it
Yeah.
steady, you get yourself through the race, you get to your checkpoints at your required time, so you beat all the cutoff times, and you finish the race. But we all have, as passionate amateurs in this endurance world, we all have to be prepared every now and again. A DNF will come at some point. There'll be races that we don't finish for whatever reason, whether we have a bad day, whether we're ill and we don't know it, or whether we get an injury, or a multitude of reasons that could count towards that. So you've got to be, mentally prepared for that and not consider it a failure.
I will absolutely consider it a failure and I will be an absolute nightmare for probably at least 4 to 5 weeks, I
Cool.
reckon.
Then I will look forward to that. Yeah. But no, I mean your fitness is there. You've been doing the work. The the point of a race like that, for the point at where your journey in ultramarathon is, marathon running is not going to be a run particularly.
No.
You're going to be running elements of it, but you're going to be hiking elements of it. It's going to be the big day out.
Mm.
You're looking forward to it though, eh?
I am. I'm really excited about it. And I am weirdly excited, but in a scared way of doing it solo as well. Because I think that's going to be if anything is going to be my downfall, it's going to be my getting inside my own head and freaking myself out and DNFing myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, you won't be alone because you'll always have your little support crew at various elements of that race waiting for you.
Yeah.
Your support crew of one.
Yeah. But it's at moments when, I mean, I don't know, it's going to be a slightly different course, but from the last couple of years, there are two or three vicious climbs in that race. And it's whether or not I can talk myself through those climbs that take hours because they are kilometers long.
God, I love the climbs. I love the climbs in that race. It's the
Oh,
descents that suck the life out of me. Watching you scamper on down those ascents ahead of me as my knees are blowing out. But I do like going uphill, I've got to tell you.
yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. I've done it a couple of times now. It's just a little bit longer than normal. I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. And I think it's going to be like everything I do. I always massively catastrophize before a thing, but then when I'm in the thing, I love the thing. It was like this morning when I did sports in the park with my ladies. I was shitting my pants last night. I was really, really nervous this morning. And then as soon as I was in it, I loved it. So yeah, it'd be fine. And what have you done this week to get out in it, Mr. Bale?
Well, I've been chipping away at my rehab plan, and my rehab plan is actually getting quite, runny rather than rehabby now. I'm doing 30, 40 minute runs with an hour's long run at the weekend, maybe a little bit more. So
Nice.
I'm beginning to feel like a runner again. I went and did a 5K the other day where I negative split that because I felt so good halfway. I mean, I have my little blips sometimes when I go out for a run. It doesn't feel quite as comfortable. But my hip has
Mm-hmm.
now got to more of a discomfort feeling than a pain feeling. So
Well, that's
I'm just
good.
gonna keep rehabbing, doing the strength work, and going up through the gears. So yeah, I have actually been out in it more than I have been for a long time. It's very strange when I do a 9 kilometer run like I did last weekend, and I think that is the longest. Think to myself that is the longest run I've done since May. That is a
That's mad.
Yeah, it's not something I'm used to, you know,
Mm.
but it is a sense of achievement because the injury has been quite severe. So Yeah, I've been getting out in it a fair amount. That
Nice,
and
good for
and and
you.
cheering you on in your races.
Yeah, well, that one race.
It was fun. I was social media manager for the night.
I was really surprised at how much fun I had that night. Yeah, that was really, really cool. So that's good. I'm glad I can take that with me for the UTBV of things I thought would be scary, but actually weren't, were in fact a lot of fun. So that's that's now logged in my brain hole, and I can keep that with me when shit gets real.
Oh,
On
you've
my
got
ultra big day out.
you have what it takes. The problem is often you can have what it takes, and from like I said at the start, through a multitude of reasons, you could always not finish this race. It's like
Mm,
when we had Renee on and she was saying, oh, maybe I'm just not fit enough. But you can be not fit enough in a race. Sorry, you can be fit enough to finish a race and still not finish it for whatever reason
yeah,
that the outside world puts in your way. Just because you get a DNF, it's not. It wasn't Renee. It was Zoe. It was Zoe who didn't finish her Ironman for whatever reason. The world decides you don't finish that race. It's not a reflection of your fitness. It doesn't have to be.
no, I know. Yeah, yeah. No, I totally get that. But it's not. And if I did DNF, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I can't believe I DNF'd because I'm so unfit. I wouldn't be like that. I'd be like, fucking hell. I was so psyched up for that. I can't believe I didn't fucking finish.
You will.
What
You
a
will.
in what a insert name of thing here that fucked me over on the day. Bastard. Yeah,
You'll finish.
that's what I
You'll
would be
finish. Now we're doing something slightly different this week, aren't we? Because we've had an
like. Yes.
influx of questions and queries from our very, very loyal listener base. But before we get on to what we're doing a bit differently, we've got a couple of
Mhm.
shout outs we need to make, have we not?
We have got shout outs. Yes, let's shout out some peeps.
So, first of all, we want to give a shout out to Jodie Sibley, who left us a review and a comment on Instagram. We really appreciate you listening. And we really appreciate you taking the time to put a review on Apple Podcasts because it makes a huge amount of difference. So, I'm going to link this shout out in with an early in the podcast request to any listeners out there who have a moment of their time to go onto Apple Podcasts and leave a review for this podcast. We would really appreciate it. And it is extremely helpful. Along with that review, you will earn yourself a shout out.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. That was super kind. So hashtag be like Jody.
And I've got a feeling this isn't the last time we'll be mentioning Jodie on this podcast. We also need to give a shout out to Rachel, who is a coachee of Get Out in It, who we are slowly coaching towards her first ever half marathon in Hackney next year. So Rachel is 7 or 8 weeks now into her training plan and is smashing it out of the park. She would
She is crushing her training goals.
She really is. We're building up slowly, but she's doing exactly what she should be doing. She's getting her running done. She's laying a foundation of strength work underneath it with some mobility. So very impressed with the progress she's making, and also the enthusiasm with which she's leaping into it.
Yes, and also the amount of coffee that she's drinking, which I massively approve of.
Yeah, she's set herself a. I can go and have a little reward coffee every time I've done a run, and that is a hell of a tactic.
That's
Rewarding yourself
brilliant. That's
for the
brilliant.
exercise you
Yeah.
do is brilliant.
Yeah, I love that. That's a brilliant thing to do.
So if anybody out there wants to head on to iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and give us a review, we will give you a shout out on next week's podcast or the corresponding week with which you leave your review.
That seemed quite complicated.
That's really simple. You just go on there and you type your thing and you say, these guys are amazing. You leave 5 stars and you put a little nickname in and you press submit and it appears. It's very easy and very quick.
Okay. Let's move along.
Let's move along. And so, yeah, as I said a minute ago, we've been inundated with questions and queries from our amazing listeners. And so we thought we've got an interview next week, which we've actually just recorded, but we thought we'd slot this week in with a bit of a Q&A because as opposed to getting back to people individually or shouting out individual questions on the pod, we thought we'd spend a bit of time actually talking through some of the questions we got, because we got some brilliant questions from people. And
We
we
have
wanted
got some
to
really cool
commit some
questions.
time to answering those questions and giving them, those listeners, the time they are due.
Yes, a bit of listener love. That's what we wanted to do. Listener love today.
Getting into it. So how are we going to do this? Are you going to read the questions? Should we take it in turns to read a question?
Well, I reckon we pick random questions to for each other. To like you ask me a question at random and I'll have a go, and then I'll do the same for you.
So I'm going to start with a random question for you. This one's from aforementioned Rachel, who's one of our coaches and is working her way to the Hackney Half Marathon. And she said, if you can do only one exercise for the rest of your lives, what would it be? I'll let you go first on this one.
That's a really, really good question. Now, when I first saw this question, my instant thought was running, obviously, but then I had a little bit of think about it. And actually, if I could only do one thing for the rest of my life, it would have to be yoga. It would be the practice of yoga because with yoga, you get everything. You get a little bit of strength, you get a little bit of flexibility. But more than that, for me, especially because of my kind of weirdly wired, anxious brain, you get a lot of breathing and meditation and mindfulness built into that very practice. So, yes, I shifted away from my gut reaction of running to yoga. What about you?
That's an interesting choice because I really thought you would choose running because of the buzz and the what it brings to your cardiovascular system, et cetera, et cetera. But you've gone for something really sensible, something which balances the strength and a little bit of cardio. It's probably more strength than it is cardio. It does raise your heart rate slightly, but you're not getting that really testing interval intervention, are you?
No, but then maybe I just kind of like overthought the whole process because I was thinking about the rest of my life and only doing one thing. And I know what I'm prone to panic attacks.
Mm-hmm.
I do suffer from anxiety and I need something like running is brilliant for that, but I do need something to now that I'm off all of my medication, I do need something to help kind of modify my mind and body when it kind of spirals. And yoga is the only thing that does that for me. Like I can't always, if I'm having a bit of a panic attack or something, I can't go off and do a 10K run, but I can center myself, focus on my breathing, do a kind of in my mind chanting type stuff wherever I am, and then kind of bring myself back down again. So yeah, if I can only do one thing for the rest of my life, it's gonna be yoga.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I
Mm.
really struggled with this question
It's
because,
deadlifts.
well, my coach's brain was like, right, what's going to bring you the most benefit in terms of longevity? Now, in terms of longevity and actually living life, your heart and lungs are probably the most important part of the human makeup. So I
Okay.
was so I was thinking, well, running, because that would give me the cardio.
Mm.
And also the running does have an element of strength in it. You're not building muscle per se, but you are using your muscles and therefore you are going to be training them. But I was thinking, if Rachel would allow me, can I have one cardio exercise and one strength exercise for the rest of my life?
No, it's one exercise
Then,
for the rest of your life.
because then I would be running and deadlifts, and then I'm happy.
No,
Then
you can't. No, you can't have two. It's got to be
I
only
can't.
one.
Well, then I'm probably going to stick with running because that cardio element, and I could go out and if as long as I can bend the term of running to my will. So maybe I could do running down the road whilst doing squat jumps or something, as long as I'm doing some element of strength in there as well. Um, yeah, I think I'd probably choose running just because strength is very important. It's the fountain of youth. It allows you to lay a foundation on which to build good posture, bone density, resistance to lots of lifestyle illnesses, etc. Um,
Hmm.
if I'm doing something for the rest of my life, it has to be something that gets me out of the house. It has to be something that
Yeah.
allows me to go places and see things and look at views and experience nature and experience the good and the bad and the rain and the wind and the sun. and all of that. And that's what running would do. You, it's unlikely I'd be able to go for a 15-mile deadlift session.
That would be that would be intense.
It,
Yeah.
it would. And so, yeah, I think I'd choose running just because of what it would do for my mental health. It would get me out of the house and allow me to, because if you find yourself in a position where you can only do one exercise for the rest of your life, you got to think about all of the things that exercise brings to you.
Yeah.
Strength training is
Agreed.
really
Yeah.
important as part of a package of things that we allow ourselves to do.
All right. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, your turn now.
I'm gonna go deep and heavy with
Oh,
my question.
shit.
Because I think now is a good time. We got this question from Lizzie37 off Insta.
Mm-hmm.
She was on Instagram and she asked us this question. It's a brilliant question, and I think it really deserves a little bit of time to answer. So, training hard, looking and feeling your best, then all of a sudden, due to injury or illness, training comes to a halt. Bad habits happen with diet, laziness, and mental demons. How can you overcome self-doubt and liking yourself again once training has started? It's
Yeah,
quite a deep question.
I saw this question come in. Now, it's something that I've got firsthand experience of. A lot of us have, but I can draw on my firsthand experience of this. Having, as you know, I've got an autoimmune disease, um, which means that sometimes I can be cruising along as fit as a flea, and then everything can fall off a cliff. And that happened to me in 2019. I'd done two of the biggest triathlons of my life back to back, and then I ended up falling off a cliff, going into hospital. They thought they were going to have to remove my colon, and I was going to have to undergo surgery. But luckily, I responded to some drugs that they gave me, and I managed to get myself out of hospital. But when I came out of hospital, I was many kilograms heavier than I was. I was very unfit, and it took a long time for me to get that impetus to train again and get back on the recovery road to recovery. So I know what it feels like to go from that to that almost instantaneously,
Mm,
but with a traumatic event in the middle of it. And that I think is something that a lot of people will have to face at some point. No matter where your health is, your age is, at some point something might happen which derails things. It's difficult. First thing, I think you need to acknowledge that it's difficult. It's not easy and there's no magic bullet. It's not like social media will often lead us to believe just be hard, get out there and do it, because you've got to
mm,
think about your mental health, where you are, and you've got to think about where you want to be, and you've got to think about where you were. Now, the most important thing I did was compare myself to where I was yesterday as opposed to where I wanted to be. So it was kind of like a one day at a time thing. And what you can do is give yourself short-term goals as well. Don't compare yourself to where you were and how fit you were or whatever you were doing back then, because a lot has changed and it can take a while to get back into the groove. But give yourself some short-term goals. Give yourself things to focus on that will allow you to measure progress in the short term, things that are
mm.
realistic and achievable, and then actively measure that progress. Don't just stumble from one day to the other, from one week to the next. Think about putting a plan in place where you've got some achievable goals built into that plan that you can work towards, and then start working towards them and tick them off, put them on a calendar, tick them off as you go. Give yourself a tangible record of what you're achieving and how you're getting there, and give yourself something long term that you want to aim for as well. And you can adjust that, change it, trim it, move it as you start to really dial in where you're going with your health and fitness. But I think record keeping is very important, and understanding that sometimes you've got to be kind to yourself and think, this has happened to me, whatever this is. And then I'm going to rebuild from where I am, and I'm not going to judge myself on where I used to be.
Do you think that will help people overcome self-doubt and mental demons though? Like having a plan and ticking stuff off. Is that enough to overcome that self-doubt and mental demons?
When you say mental demons, put some meat on those bones. What do you mean?
Well, it's not my question. So this was a phrase from Lizzie 37's question. So I'm guessing that the mental demons are those things in your brain that say you can't do this anymore, or you're not good enough, or all of those things. The mental demons of self-doubt, I
Yeah, I
think.
mean, self-doubt can come in many, many different forms, though, can't it? It can come because you're getting older and you can think, I just can't do this anymore. This isn't for me. It can come through believing that you never had something or that it's not for you, that sport's not for you, it's for other people. Or maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Now, there's a lot out there at the moment in terms of content and in terms of podcasts and in terms of people interviews you can listen to with certain people who can show you that a lot of stuff is achievable and obtainable from lots of different segments of society. It's not a case of you need to be this shape, that size, this age in order to be able to do things. And as we progress through life, the best thing to do is get the best out of yourself at all times. It's like when we were talking to Renee. This is actually a reflection of Renee's interview when she said, I sometimes convince myself if I'm not going to win, there's no point in getting the best out of myself.
Yeah,
Whereas in reality, the best thing you can do all the time is get the best out of yourself. It doesn't matter. You don't need to compare that to other people or compare it to other people within your sport or whatever else you're trying to achieve. The best out of you is the best you can do. And, if we want to get the most out of this life, then that's probably where we need to start, isn't it?
yeah. Because there's another phrase I love as well, which and I just can't remember who this is from, but it's not from me, and I'm not plagiarizing. I just don't know who said it first, but the phrase is comparison is the thief of joy, which I think
Yes.
is such a true phrase. So staying away from social media and comparing yourself to, super shiny influences on there is a really good idea. And I think, hmm, just knowing that whatever journey you're on, whether you're running or doing strength or any sports that you've chosen, and you're coming back from an injury or an illness, it's gonna take time. I think the acceptance of time needs to be there as well. Like you have to be able to say, right, well, it's just going to take however many months, or it's going to take, however many weeks, and then just accept it, which I know is easier said than done.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from experience in the last few months of this. I've just had to knuckle down and crack on with
Mm,
getting over this hip injury, and it's a bastard, but you just got to do it if you want to get where you're going to go. Mental demons can come in various forms and various guises, but ultimately, it's about understanding that if you find something that makes you happier than you are when you're not doing it, then it's worth doing, and you should keep doing it.
mm,
Find something that brings you joy and get after it.
yeah,
It doesn't have to be to any particular standard. You just have to chip away at it. The more you chip away at it, the more that momentum builds, the more those endorphins come, the more joy you get from it. You just keep going and you keep building and you keep building and you keep building. It's not a case of going from this to that immediately. It's a case of building in long-term consistency and having, like I keep saying, that contract with life where you say, I am a happier, more fulfilled person if I'm doing this than if I'm not. And I know that even in this moment where I don't want to get out of bed and go for a walk, or I don't want to go and lift some weights because I don't fancy it, I know that this evening, when it's time to go to bed, I'll be happier with my day if I have done it than if I haven't.
yeah,
And do I want that slightly irritated feeling now or that depressed feeling later, having known that I haven't done it?
yeah. Well, it's like what Ben was saying last week, wasn't it? You've got to turn it into a habit, and once it's a habit, then even if it does feel slightly irritating first thing in the morning, if you've got to go for a swim or a run or a bike ride or whatever, um, you just go "Oof," and do it anyway because it's habit.
Yeah, don't rely on motivation. The
Mm,
most motivating thing you'll ever do is having done the exercise.
yeah,
And then next time it will be easier. That's what motivation is, in my opinion. You motivate yourself by proving to yourself that you can do it. You don't rely on motivation when you don't want to do it to make you do it.
and there's also a thing that my yoga teacher does. at the end of every session that we do with her, which I think is really lovely. And this might help combat some of those mental demons if you get some of those. After every yoga session, after we've had our meditation, she makes us sit back up again. And regardless of, because we've all got different levels and abilities in that class, some people are far more flexible than others, for example. But she always tells us to say thank you to our bodies, because even if somebody is slightly more advanced than somebody else, we've all worked really hard. We've all worked up to our boundaries, up to our frontiers. And she always says, say thank you to your body. And I think that's really nice. Because I think for a lot of people, especially if there's been injury or trauma or illness or anything like that, so many people hate their bodies.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that you've said before on the podcast is that you don't like your legs, do you?
I fucking hate my legs.
But your relationship with your body has changed since you've been running
Yeah,
because you have just you're able to look at a body part of you that you don't like, but be able to see what they can do for you, which is carry you over these long distances during ultra marathons. And that has changed the way you perceive yourself.
it has. Yeah. I mean, I would never like walk down the shops wearing a skimpy pair of shorts. Not going to do it. But what has happened is I'll come back after a 30K or 35K long run on a Sunday and go, fucking hell, legs, nice work. And be quite appreciative that they carried me all that way up all those hills, over all those hours, and brought me home safely. So I have a lot of respect now for my short, stumpy, little fat legs. So yeah, it's really cool actually, the way the difference in perception that you can get if you maintain or continue with an exercise over a period of time. So that's also really, really cool.
Yeah. And when it comes to beating those demons, I mean, when I came out of hospital and I was all kinds of messed up, proving to yourself you can still do things, you know, maybe not to a level you expected or you previously could, but working through a process and proving you can still do things does the world of good. Also, you know, if you want to do an event or you want to get to a certain level or you want to give yourself some metrics where you're lifting certain weights, get some professional help, get yourself a coach, get somebody who knows what they're talking about, who can help you dial that in that process a little bit and will help you achieve things that you never thought possible. Because I'm willing to bet that, you know, it's never over. There's no point in stopping. This isn't a dress rehearsal. Keep pushing for those goals, whatever they are, and let them bring you joy.
And I also think maybe doing it with other people. I think
Yeah,
other
that's a good.
people make a huge difference. So yeah, obviously a coach, you're working with another person. But if you're a runner like me, one of the reasons why I do events is so that I actually see other people, because all of my training is done on my own. And then going to an event or a race like last Friday and being surrounded by like literally exactly 300 other people who are doing the same thing, it makes a massive difference because you're not alone. Other people are out there doing the same thing as you. They're trying to achieve the same thing as you in that very specific event. But it's nice. It's nice to know that there are other people out there who think like you, who love the things that you do, and it can really help reduce those feelings of isolation, perhaps.
Agreed. So, is it my turn to ask a question now?
Your turn to ask a question. Thank you, Lizzie, for that one. That was a really deep question.
This one's from Lucy. If you only have minimal time to train, what should you do? Also, what exercises are good for insomnia?
Ooh, okay. Well, I mean, I think if I can definitely give some tips on the minimal time thing, because teacher, full-time job, all that jazz. You there are things that you can do which will help you get the most out of a short amount of time. So like hit training, or Tabata style training, where you're working at your max capacity, but just for like 20 or 30 minutes, which is super, super cool. I think that's really nice. Um, and well, I mean, I love running, but if I'm struggling for time, I'll go out for 30 minutes and just do a 30-minute run, and that's fine. That'll do me. That's quite nice. But I think there are plenty of um exercises that you can do in minimal amounts of time. It just depends on when that time is.
Yeah, but
Like,
there are tactics and techniques you can put in place. It's not really about the exercise, I don't think, because you can give yourself a purpose. I think is the first thing. What are you training for, and why are you training for it, and create a structure around your day. If you're a really busy person, then every second in that day counts, and you need to understand at what point in your day are you going to do your training to stop that time just slipping by. Don't leave it as a vagary. Don't leave it as at
mm,
some point today I'm going to do some exercise. Plan your days and make sure that you put that time aside within your plan to allow yourself to do that. And then don't overprescribe that exercise, I think is most important. If I was if you've got a really busy day or you've got somebody you're coaching with a really, really busy timetable, don't fill that timetable up with exercise. Don't take
mm,
every free time where you could be exercising and fill it up.
yeah.
I would start at around 75% of the free time they've got for exercise. I'd be starting below 75% to make it so that it's achievable and easily achievable, so that when you hit those targets, you say, I was going to do this today and I've done it, as opposed to, I'm so rushed, I haven't got time, I don't fancy it. Make it so it's really easy to hit those targets, because then over time, once you're hitting those targets, it becomes a habit and it becomes something that's built into your program. I was going to say, even if to begin with, part of that building a habit is just getting home from work or getting up in the morning or whatever point of time in day where you said you were going to training, take a moment, get changed into your training kit, and then do or don't do the exercise. But start to build that habit of getting ready to do the exercise for a few weeks. And then you start to build in the time you spend exercising. So you're trying to form that habit and that cycle in your life.
So do you mean like just doing 5 or 10 minutes several times a week, or do you mean doing one or two slightly bulkier sessions in a week? When you
Whatever
mean like
fits
lower
into your
than
timetable,
okay.
whatever you're going to be able to maintain. There is no one golden bullet when it comes to exercise. If you're trying to get more active and move more, then the most successful way to do that is the way in which you're going to maintain consistency. If you just think, well, I've got to do big sessions, so I'll force that into my week, but it's not going to fit and you don't enjoy it, you won't carry on.
Mm.
If you've only got time to do a certain amount of exercise or a certain amount of movement, do what you can and make sure that it works. Build it into a habit, build it into an activity, and make sure you choose something that you enjoy. It doesn't have to be going out for a run, it doesn't have to be going for a bike ride. It could just be doing some gardening. If that's what brings you joy, if that's what you're going to keep doing, then keep doing it. And I think the most important thing as well is know when to draw a line. If you have if you have put a week structure in place and decided that you're going to do some training, but you miss a session, you missed a session. Draw a line and move on. The next day is a new day. You don't need to beat yourself up. It doesn't need to derail you. It doesn't need to mean that it's not worth doing anymore. It was just one day, you missed it, move on. The next day is a new one and start again.
Fair enough. Okay, what about the insomnia thing though?
Exercise helps sleep. There's a lot of studies that say that. There is debate over what time of day you should exercise in relation to sleep. Um, Aerobic exercise releases endorphins, and that can keep people awake. So, certain studies say that you should perhaps exercise at least 1 to 2 hours before you go to bed. It can also raise your core body temperature. So, again, 1 to 2 hours before you go to bed, give yourself a chance to cool down, certainly on hot days. Um, People who engage in at least 30 minutes of moderate exercise may see a difference in sweet sleep quality that night, because it helps you go to sleep. And also, they say that resistance training, strength training is very, very good for people who want to improve their sleep quality, as is yoga.
Yeah, because that was going to be my go-to yoga because of the meditation aspect and
Yeah.
that kind of ability to help control your breathing and your thoughts and everything. So my advice, if somebody said, "Oh my God, I can't sleep," my advice would always be yoga.
Yeah, but create an active lifestyle, you know. If you can't sleep, then there may be a deeper problem than exercise. It may be that you're stressed. It may be that you've got a lot going on, a lot in your life, a lot on your mind, a lot of things that you need to go and maybe get some advice on, go and see
Mm,
a doctor, understand why you can't sleep. It's because there might be a reason for this, a sort
yeah.
of a mechanical reason in your brain, in your body that's preventing that sleep from coming. You can help yourself get to sleep using exercise, creating an active lifestyle. Being an active person will promote you sleeping better at night.
Mm,
And then when you get to that point of going to sleep, you take some time to do some yoga, do some deep breathing, relax, lower your blood pressure with some deep breathing and some yoga. Get yourself into a position where you're comfortable. But if insomnia is a real problem in someone's life, then go and get some advice on that because there might be another reason. But
yeah.
exercise and activity can help bring sleep to someone's world.
Nice.
So now it's my turn to ask you a question. No,
No, no.
it's your turn to ask me a question.
Yes. Okay. Who have we got? All right. I am going to. Oh, there's a good one here from Insta, from Catty Hine. Now, I know we still had quite hot weather recently, but we are coming into autumn. And one of her questions, she asked a few, but one of the ones I liked was, how do you keep motivated to keep training and exercising when winter is here and it's constantly cold and dark and grim and maybe not safe?
Yeah. So how do you keep motivated? There's a few questions in here, isn't there? Motivation. How do we keep motivated? Well, that goes back to my contract with life. I know I'm a happier person. I'm going to speak from my own perspective now. I know I'm a happier person when I do my exercise. I have built, how old am I? Almost, God, almost 25 years of doing exercise. And if I'm not training for something or I'm not pushing myself or I'm not trying to be fitter than I was the day before and build that momentum, I know I'm not a happy person. So I'll always, motivation is almost irrelevant. I know that if I'm not training or exercising, then I'm telling myself off. So that's how I keep motivated. It just is. How do you actually go about training when it's grim and wet and dark and horrible? That's an entirely different matter. Certainly where I live in the world, it gets very dark, very grim, and very wet. And that's a case of, and certainly can be unsafe on the roads, or if you're training on your own and you're worried about your environment, all these things can factor into it. Tell people where you're going if you're going to go out. If it's bad weather, if it's dark, make sure you're wearing the right kit. Make sure you've got reflective things on. Make sure you've got a headlight. Make sure you've got a phone. Make sure that people understand they know where you're going, and give the people that you live with or are around you an idea of when you'll be back. All these things factor into safety. Actually getting yourself out the door, that's a different thing entirely. If it's shitting it down, you know, oh, it's a case of understanding that you'll be a happier person if you do it. And for me, having a goal early in the next year gets me through that winter. And I'm lucky enough to have a treadmill. Whereas if the weather's really grim, I can do some speed work on my treadmill. Not everyone's got that option.
Mm,
But, there are other things you can put in your life alongside the training that you normally do, which can help facilitate fitness in the winter months. Maybe you join a class once or twice a week that will get you out of the house and get you meeting other people, seeing other people, socializing, doing some activities, doing some exercise in a sociable environment with lights indoors. It doesn't have to be dragging yourself out into the roads.
yeah. I think for me, it's what because we were talking a little bit about this last week with Mary and Ben, weren't we? And again, like it's habit. So if it's just something that you do, you run 3 times a week, it's a habit, that's what you do, no questions asked. But I think for me, I'm not really at that stage where it's that ingrained in my psyche at the moment. It's not like I'm not like you and Ben and Mary right at this moment. So I do need a race or something to pin my training on to keep me going out during the winter months when it's really gross because it can get super cold here where I live and very icy. But the other thing is do it with other people. Because like there have been a few training runs which I do on my own. I always run on my own. If the weather's particularly nasty, like if it's really foggy, which means it's going to be quite treacherous in the hills on the trails, I'll call it off. But the sports in the park thing I do with my girlfriends, and we've been doing that for over 3 years. we never stopped doing that, even when the winter was at its worst, because we were a group and we would all just go. And because oh, so and so is going to go, so I should go too. Or, I can't let the group down, so I better go along.
That's
So
the
I
thing,
think,
isn't it? Join a class, make it a
yeah,
sociable
do
experience.
do it with other people, do something with other people, yeah. And I think the accountability will keep you going as well.
I think
So,
to add to Kat's question, because she did ask another question, which I'll just add to yours. She said, as a coach, how does it feel to know your athlete can outrun you? Now, my answer to that would be, she fucking can't. If it came to it, I would turn myself inside out to win that race.
yeah, you would, because you have got that kind of, macho man quality about you. Is like, I can't be beaten by a girl. So
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There are plenty of women in this world who would slay me night and day when it comes to any form of physical activity.
But I think for the moment, over long distances, I would hand you your ass
Yeah,
over
I got
long
a feeling
distances.
you would. So let's have another question. This
Mm,
this one is from Harriet.
mm.
It was on Instagram, and she says, "How do you move away from fixating on what the scales say?" And we've both got a
Ooh.
lot to say on this, I think.
Oh my goodness. I hate weighing scales. I hate them. I hate them so much. I have them and I use them, and then I hate them instantly when I've used them. I just hate weight, just in general. Don't think that we should look or pay attention to it or give it as much airspace and importance as we do these days. And I don't know why. I don't know why it's become this like massive fixation thing. And I get it, Harriet, because I was very fixated on them during my adolescent years, which was why I had an eating disorder. And, my entire life revolved around starvation and, seeing how much weight I'd lost that week. So I get it. I do get what it is to be fixated on the weighing scales. And again, it's not something that can just go instantly. You can't just go, oh, okay, that's a brilliant answer. Now my problems are solved. It's something that will take a lot of time, I think, to kind of get away from those, to get away from those numbers or the kind of I don't know, the weight of, I don't know. They're just, it's a weird thing. It's like the like addicts have got this monkey on their shoulders that's kind of, controlling their brain and stuff. Like the weighing scales do a similar kind of thing. The weighing scales have become the modern day, monkey on the shoulders,
Yeah, yeah.
manipulating our brains.
I've got a lot to say on this.
Mm,
I think the most important thing and the first thing you need to understand when you're talking about weight is what that number is telling you. And basically, all it's telling you is how much you weigh in that moment in time.
yeah.
And it's a metric, and it's a very imperfect metric because we've been conditioned to think that lighter equals healthier and heavier equals less healthy.
Yeah.
And that is a dramatic oversimplification of how health works. Weight is, like I said, simply one metric and not a very useful one. Body composition is a much more useful metric than weight. So ideally, we need to move away from the idea of, well, I'm getting healthier if I'm getting lighter, because, you know, it's not always the case. At the absolute extremes, a much too heavy person needs to get lighter, and a much too light person needs to get heavier. In the middle somewhere, there is this huge gray area because two people can weigh exactly the same but have dramatically different body composition. Muscle is more dense than fat. It weighs more whilst taking up less space. So 2 kilograms of fat will look very different to 2 kilograms of muscle on the body.
Yeah.
I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
Well, it's just that it's very difficult for normal everyday people to know what their body composition is. I mean, I know these days you can get
Yeah,
super fancy scales that can
I'm
measure all
getting
that
there with that. I'm getting
nonsense,
there with
but
that.
okay, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
cool, cool, cool.
So, how much you weigh is not truly representative of how healthy you are. At the extremes, it can be important. So, what I think you need to do, if someone is truly obsessed with the idea of weighing themselves and having a metric, is find other ways of measuring how comfortable you are with your body shape. Like for me, I I have different clothes I can fit in when I'm really fit, and
Okay.
clothes that I can't, and then I can't fit into them when I'm not in race shape. And that gives me an idea of where I'm at in terms of body composition. I don't have to go and pay for a DEXA scan. I don't have to pay for the really fancy scales. I just know that this t-shirt, for example, I can fit it. It fits me when I'm in shape. It doesn't when I'm not. And that gives me an idea of where I'm at in terms of my body shape.
Mm.
Um, Record your progress and try taking 2 or 3 weeks off looking at the scales. Just all types of metrics. Just remove it for 2 or 3 weeks. Don't even look at it. Don't think about it. And then once you've moved away from linking what the scales say with daily happiness, because often if you're obsessed with the scales, you'll get up in the morning, you'll weigh yourself, and that will set how you feel for the rest of the day.
Yeah,
And
totally.
and how you feel for the rest of the day often is will mean what you do and don't eat and what you do and don't exercise, how you do and don't exercise. Because if those scales don't say what you want to say and want them to say in the morning, then it can ruin your day. The trick is not to associate how you feel for the day with what the scales say at the start, but more what you do for that day is how you should feel. The happier the day makes you feel, the more likely it is to have contained some sort of movement. Do you know what I mean? So let the
Yeah.
day decide whether you're happy, not a moment in time in the morning. And then when you go back to the scales, having had a few weeks off them, make sure that you take a weekly average and not just those moments in time in the morning. Because a weekly average will tell you what's happening with your tissue, muscle, and fat, whereas daily fluctuations are simply a story of body water. You
Right.
can
Yeah.
fluctuate up to 2 kilograms on a daily basis just by whether you're fully hydrated or not, or whether you retain some water from the last day.
Mm.
You can get up in the morning and be like, oh shit, I've put on 2 kilograms. No, you fucking haven't. You just you just your body just goes up and down depending on how much water it's holding on to or not. The weekly average is the key to everything. But before we get to a weekly average, the first thing you got to do is step away from those scales and make sure that your daily happiness is not linked to that number in the morning because
Yeah.
it can completely derail your day.
Oh yeah, totally. It totally does. Yeah. And I've had plenty of experience of that. But I've also found since I've been training regularly and doing my running and stuff, I don't really step on the scales as much as I used to because I don't really care. I know I can run a certain distance.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can run for a bunch of hours and it's all good and my body doesn't break down. And even though I'm eating plenty of food to fuel all of those runs pre and post, I don't really give a fuck anymore.
No,
But
and
the
this is
scales,
this
it's
is
really
it.
nice.
This is it. You can, if you like data and you like mapping your weight, feel free. But this is why you need to take a step. Well, I'm going to say you. I mean, the
Yeah.
question asker. Take a step back from weighing yourself. Have a few weeks off. Disassociate your happiness with that metric, and find other metrics in your life that you can measure your health, happiness, and progress against. And whether
Yeah.
that is improving your diet or being able to do a certain amount of exercise and mapping that and saying, well, instead of measuring my weight every day, I'm going to measure every week how many hours I spend exercising, or how
Yeah.
much I can lift in the gym, or how far I can run. All these metrics are an actual indicator of an improvement in health and fitness. And with that, with an improvement in health and fitness comes a body recompositioning.
Yeah. 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 Definitely. I think understanding or not even understanding but seeing how much you can do, seeing improvements in your performance, whether you're whatever sport you've chosen, is so much more important than what those scales are saying.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But i do
Absolutely.
i do like that 2 week detox idea.
Yeah, yeah. You've
Two
got
or
to
3 week
take
detox. Yeah,
you
it's a
got
good
to
idea.
take your happiness, your daily happiness away from what you weigh in the morning.
Yeah.
Because it can spiral, if it doesn't say what you want it to say in that moment. And then you could have a really long wee and weigh a lot less. It's
Yeah.
it's it's insane that I don't know. I think it's the diet industry has convinced people or is working hard to convince people over the years that weight is the key, because
Yeah.
then they can sell products that will allow people to lose weight, and they think, oh, I'm getting healthier, I'm getting happier, and then they keep buying the products. In reality, movement, exercise, health, cardiovascular fitness, heart health. But what I'm saying is disassociate your happiness with how much that's what that scale says
Yeah.
every day.
And if it were me as well, like, back in the day, if it were me, I would have to remove, I'm not saying chuck your scales out because maybe they were an expensive piece of kit. So, don't chuck them, but put them somewhere where you can't see them every day. Like most people have them in the bathroom, get them out of the bathroom, maybe pop them up in the attic for a little bit or in the garden shed or something like that. Get them out of where you're going to see them every single day. So you're not like slightly tempted just to have a quick peek, especially if you think, oh, I did a, bunch of exercise yesterday and I ate really healthily. I must have lost some weight by now.
Yeah, because
Get them out
let's
of the
say you
way.
did a bunch of exercise the day before. For example, your 30-kilometer run.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot of inflammation in your body. You're going to
Yes.
have drunk a lot when you got home. Your body's going to hold on to that water because it's like, shit, I've just done a load of exercise. I need this. So it holds onto the water. It's an inflamed body. If you weighed yourself the next day, you would have been heavier.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't know that as an athlete or someone who's trying to do exercise or be active, and you just think, hang on a second, I've done a load of exercise. I should have lost some weight. Doesn't work like that.
I do remember like after the first year of doing the UTBV, the
Yes, I
55K,
remember this.
yeah. I did weigh myself the next day or the day after, and I had put on about 2 or 3 kilos, and I was like, what the fuck? But then a few days later, it all gone. It was just inflammation and water retention and stuff, but it was mental.
I remember talking you down.
Yeah, because you would think, after being out for 10 hours non-stop exercising, that you'd be
You would have
thinner.
done. If
Mm.
you'd weighed yourself at the end of that race, you would have been 2 kilograms lighter than when you started,
Yeah,
because you'd have sweated out so much. And no matter what you put in yourself when you're doing an event like that, you can't
can't
outdrink
replenish.
the sweat rate, especially on a hot day like that. So yeah, but as soon as you finish, your body starts taking stuff on and taking stuff on and taking stuff on and retaining it and holding on to it because it's clever like that.
Yeah, it was mental. But it was yeah, and you had to talk me down, but it was after that and I was like, just stop it. Stop weighing yourself. It's irrelevant.
I mean, I weigh myself every day, but it's just part of my routine, is what I do. I wake up and I like to see the graph in the Garmin app,
You're
you
you're a
know.
metrics man.
Yeah, I do. I like it. But I mean, it gone long gone are the days where what that scale says in the morning has any impact on my health or happiness through the day.
Yeah.
I mean, I do the same thing. Almost, I eat the same shit every day, almost just in different forms. One day I might stir fry it all. One day I might bake it all, but it's the same shit. All
So
right,
yes,
it's
get
your
rid of those
turn.
scales, Harry. Okay. I am going to. Oh, right. Okay. This one is from Nefeli in Collonges. So this was an email one. That was very exciting. Now, what sport, she asks, is good for painful joints?
Interesting question, this, because there's two prongs to this. If you've got painful joints, then there are certain sports you can do which will limit the impact whilst your joints are painful. So you can still do exercise whilst you're getting your joints sorted.
Okay.
So let's say you've got painful knees or something, and you want to do something with limited impact. You can go swimming, you can go bicycling, you could go hiking to a point. There are things you can do that will lessen the impact on your body and stop those joints hurting in that moment and irritating those painful joints. But ultimately, if you haven't got painful joints, you're worried about getting painful joints, exercise is not going to cause painful joints. What's going to cause painful joints is not doing the correct amount of strength work, mobility work to underpin whatever exercise you're doing. So
Mm.
I'm getting a whiff of a fear of running from this question. Do you know what I mean? A kind of like
Yeah.
what can I do that would be good for my knees? Because obviously running won't do it. Now, running is great for your knees because it
Mm.
helps build up those connective tissues and the tendons around your knees, and it strengthens it. So I think if you've got painful joints, go and see a specialist, a physio, who can help you understand what is the root cause of that joint pain.
Mm.
whether it's something relatively minor to relatively severe, whatever it is, you can probably put a solution in place that will fix it and allow you access to all sports out there, because there aren't many sports that are bad for your joints.
Yeah.
So go and see a specialist. I mean, my physio that I've been seeing about my hip, I had a discussion with her um, about osteoarthritis and how initially I was diagnosed with that. And she was saying, well, even if you had osteoarthritis, there are things you can do from a strength perspective, from a mobility perspective, to get through that and still be able to run. So don't think that sports is bad for your joints. If you've got painful joints, choose a sport that's got less impact in it while you get your joints sorted out. But go and see a specialist, understand what you can do and what things you can put in place to help you build up the strength and negate that painful joint issue.
I genuinely thought you were just going to say deadlifts, mate. So I'm quite impressed by that by that answer. Yeah. Okay. She actually asked Nefili actually asked quite a few questions. Can we go through all of her questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So she asked also about is it better to do smaller workouts every single day, sort of like up to 30 minutes, or longer workouts up to an hour or so, once or twice a week? What's better?
Two answers to this. First one depends what you're training for. You know,
Okay.
if you're training for a marathon, then we need to design you a marathon training plan. And that won't come in 30-minute segments. That'll come in whatever form that comes in, depending on where you're at and where you want to be. If you're training for a cycle race, a criterium, we need to design a plan around that. If you're training to, I don't know, walk across the UK or walk across France, you need to train appropriate to that. So what are you training for? What's your reason for training? But secondly, if you don't have a goal or a reason for training, you just want to understand how best you can maximize your health and fitness, it's whatever fits into your life. Whatever
Okay.
you are going to do that fits into your schedule, that you are going to keep doing. If the idea of training, what was it? I can't remember what were the time spans she gave?
So
Uh,
every day, smaller workouts every day up to 30 minutes, or longer workouts up to an hour once or twice a week.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you are trying to achieve, but it also depends on what works. If I were to say the answer to this question, oh, you've got to do 1 hour of exercise twice a week. And she's like, well, I don't have room for that, but I've
Yeah.
got room for 30 minutes of movement every day. Then me prescribing 2 hours in a set, 2 hours a week in hour blocks is not going to work.
Yeah.
It's whatever fits into your life.
Mm.
Try and move every day. Try and get some movement into every day.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about actual time set aside for exercise, it's whatever you can consistently do over time.
Nice. That's what I thought your answer was going to be. Yeah.
But then I nailed
Um,
it.
yeah, you did. Yeah, you're nailing it. It's quite impressive. Stretching. Necessary after a training session, yes or no? And why?
Well, flexibility is a good idea as we age. It helps keeps your hips, your hamstrings all sort of nice and supple as you get older, and means that you're less likely to make that sort of noise as you get in and out of a chair as you get older. So flexibility in general is a good thing. If you're doing a certain sport, you have to be as flexible as that sport requires you to be. So you've got to be, if you're a runner, you've got to have that, you've got to be able to do that knee drive, you've got to be able to get your leg up, you've got to have some hamstring flex, you've got within the constraints of that running motion, you have to be flexible enough for that. If you're a swimmer, you've got to have the flexibility in whatever parts of your body you're using for that swimming stroke to be able to do it. So flexibility is good. Flexibility within the constraints of your own sport is a necessity. Now, when it comes to exercise, warming up and cooling down. Warming up, you've got to be a bit more active. It's more of your active movements. It's not, you don't stretch cold muscles because
Mm.
you can damage
Okay.
them. So you're not stretching them. You're using an active warm up. You do lunges, some gentle jogging, some movements, some yoga movements, things like that are good, where you're moving through the poses to get yourself warmed up. After you've exercised, your muscles are nice and supple. That's when you can do some stretching. Now, there are studies that say that stretching at the end of exercise doesn't actually help recovery from that specific exercise very much at all. But overriding that is that flexibility is a good thing in life. So if you associate doing your stretches with having done some exercise where you are nice and warmed up, nice and supple, then that's not a bad time to do your stretching
Mm.
because you've done a lot of exercise, your muscles are warm, your blood is flowing, you're not going to damage yourself. You can go and do some stretches, you can hold them to get the benefit, and that's a good time to do it. Just because it might not directly impact that specific recovery from that specific training session doesn't mean that globally in your life, doing some stretching then is a bad thing.
Yeah, because it's also nice if you've done like an intense interval training session or something like that, where your quads or your glutes or whatever might be a little bit stiff. If you do a little bit of stretching afterwards, it's just nice to get that mobility back into your legs. You know, it kind of, I don't know, it's like a stretch. It's like a morning stretch, but for your
Absolutely.
legs
These
or
same
quads after
studies that
workout.
say that it might not impact recovery also state that it makes you feel good. It can
Yeah.
make you feel good. It can make you feel better, which, in itself is a good thing. So, yeah, I mean, stretching, what was the question? Stretching,
Is it necessary after training sessions?
I translated it as essential after a sports session. Yes, no, why? So, essential? No. Beneficial to your mind? Maybe, if you enjoy it. Flexibility in general in life? Good thing. But you don't have to be stupidly flexible. But flexibility as we age is a good thing to build into
Yeah.
day to day life. And if you associate doing some stretching with having finished an exercise session, have at it. It's a great time to do it.
Brilliant, brilliant. And she had one last little question in her list. What is the difference between yoga and
And
Pilates?
I've just put in my notes Maria. Because fuck knows. I don't know. What's the difference
I
between yoga and Pilates, Maria?
I do actually know the answer to this, which
Isn't
is
isn't wasn't he called like John Pilates or something, the guy that started it?
yes, it was some guy
Jimmy
in the
Pilates.
yeah, what was his name? Yeah, Derek Pilates. No, his surname was Pilates. I think it was Joseph. He was European, maybe German. And it was in the early 20th century. And he did take a lot of, well, pretty much all of his movements, all of his exercises from yoga. So, like superficially, in terms of movement, there's not a lot of difference between yoga and Pilates. Pilates was created by Derek, whatever his name was, Mr. Pilates, to reinforce and strengthen the core and the major muscle groups and kind of associate that with breathing as well. But Pilates really is about just making your body stronger. Yoga, on the other hand, is a deeply profound arm of the Hindu philosophical belief system. And it's thousands of years old compared to Pilates, which is only like really super recent. But yoga as well, the movements that we do, the postures that we do in yoga in the West, again, is only like one tiny aspect of yoga as a practice. And if you find a good yoga teacher over here in the West, they will link those postures of that movement with your body to your breathing, to your consciousness. It's a much deeper full mind and body experience compared to Pilates, I think. But like the practice that we do over here in the West is nothing compared to what they will be doing in India for sure. But it's
So
a
do you think
much
is it like the difference between being plant-based and vegan?
that's a really, really good comparison. It really is. Yeah, Pilates is plant-based and yoga is vegan. Yeah, for sure, for sure. I've done both. I've been doing yoga for years, but I started doing Pilates. I added Pilates to my routine just after COVID. Um, and then I stopped after a few months because it wasn't giving me anything more than yoga. Whereas yoga gave me, like I mentioned earlier, because I've got this anxious brain and I have these issues with panic attacks and stuff, the whole aspect of yoga where I was concentrating on mindfulness, my consciousness, my breathing, that was so much more beneficial than just concentrating on my body, because Pilates is just about to get your body stronger and therefore perhaps looking a little bit better. In yoga, the flexibility and the strength is like a byproduct of the practice. Nobody does yoga to be strong and flexible. That's just a byproduct of the practice. Does that make sense? The purpose of the practice is to connect your body with your mind and your mind to the outer universe, because we're all like interconnected in this massive, energetic, wonderful awesomeness that is the universe. So yeah, plant-based and vegan. Nailed it.
I think that's it, isn't it, on the questions?
I think it is. Yes. Yeah, yeah. We got through all of them.
How do you
Not
think we
bad.
did?
Okay, I think. I think for a couple of passionate amateurs, I think
Legendary podcasters.
I think we did all right. Yeah. But that was fun. Well, first of all, I love the fact that people reached out to us and like wanted to have a conversation. That was super cool. Keep doing that. And also, it was really interesting to have a lot of different topics to talk about and getting into there's some quite deep things we covered there. Yeah.
Too right. So we better go and have a coffee and forget about it, shall we?
I'm desperate for a cup of coffee now. Yeah. The weekly roast. Is that it?
Now, you see, I told you she would be back, didn't I? Because not only did she leave us a review on our podcast app on the Apple Podcasts, but Jodie Sibley also sent a packet of artisanal coffee to get out in it towers for this week's weekly roast. And she sent us a bag of Kofra Coffee's Hi-Fi Blend.
Nice.
Now, I sent you a picture of the bag, and doesn't it look cool as fuck?
It does look cool as fuck, and I'm a little bit gutted that I'm in a separate country to you, and I can't believe you haven't got the fucking packet of coffee to show on
Shake.
camera.
Yeah,
Shake,
it's
show on
downstairs.
camera. Yeah. But that was really kind. That was such a kind gesture of
It
for
really
Jodie.
was. Turned
So
up in a
nice.
package at Get Out and It Towers with a small card and a little note in there, and it was really really nice. Now, if you go on the Kofra Coffee's website, which I'll put a link in the show notes, they say in the world of high end coffee, there is one rock star, Nesto Lasso. His latest release fits perfectly with the hi fi label. It's bold, unique, and full of magic, a special formulation worthy of the hi fi edition. So, this is a
Mm,
special coffee roasters in Norwich that do these individual roasts, and it looks fantastic. I have not yet tried it, but I will, and I will report back. And I'll
nice.
finish it all before I see you next.
I was just about to say, don't drink it all, you bastard, before you come over to France. Save a little bit for me because I want to taste it.
I'll do my best. Uh, should we put some music on?
Absolutely. I've got such a banger for you this week. Turn it up.
That'll probably do, won't it? Well, I'm going to go first because you went first last week.
Okie doke.
So I've been inspired. I was inspired by Mary's choice of song last week, coupled with a film I watched the weekend before. So
Mm-hmm.
I've gone for the Queen song One Vision from 1986's album A Kind of Magic, which is the unofficial yet official soundtrack of the Highlander film,
Okay.
because Queen saw that film without any music and then went and wrote the songs that go with it. And One Vision is the first track off that album, and it is a banger to go running with, especially if you're sprinting for home.
Nice. Nice. 1986.
1986, yeah.
Blimey. Were you even born yet? I don't think you were you?
No, I was one. Yeah, you were
Baby
18, weren't you?
tail. In 1986, I was 237. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
What's your
am the
track?
Highlander. Well, my track actually, it's super new to me, and I'm putting it in the list because I listened to it when I went for my when I did my what did I do on Tuesday? Speed intervals. And my brother sent this to me. It is the Destroyer of Worlds Oppenheimer remix.
There you go.
Yeah, and it's by, hang on a minute. Oh my God, I can't read for shit. I can't see the name of. Anyway, Aaron, Aaron Hibel, Aaron Hibel. I can't read for shit. This is very small text on the thing, and I don't see his name. But it's such a cool track, and it is so good to run
Aaron
to.
Hibel.
That's the Badger. Yes,
I'll have to have a
Oppenheimer
list of
remix
that.
it.
Why haven't you sent that to me so far? You've had it for a week. Send me the songs, Herring.
I haven't had it for a week. I got it a couple of days ago.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Good,
So
good.
it's yeah. It jumped up my list of tracks to put on the Spotify playlist because yeah, it's a fucking banger.
Nice. We'll add both those to the playlist this week. As you have heard, it's been a Q&A edition, so we haven't had a guest this week, so there won't be an additional song from our guest, but we have done an interview for next week, which we did this afternoon
Mhm.
with a very prominent and successful British ultra runner. So that is going to be fun, and what a chat that was.
That was a wicked hike and a chat. I was very inspired by her. So yes, I'm excited for everybody to hear that next week.
Yeah, indeed. So am I. But that's probably about it from us, isn't it?
I reckon so. Yeah, it's time for the weekend. Oh no, I've got to go and do hill repeats. No.
You have.
I get to go and do hill repeats. Reframing.
You do indeed. So if you want to find out more, head to www.getoutinit.events. There's loads of info on there. You can sign up for the newsletter, download the personal development friend, and book a free consultation with us to discuss your health and fitness plans, needs, and requirements. And we will help you put a roadmap in place to get you there. If you liked the podcast, as I said earlier, jump onto Apple Podcasts, give us a review. It's really, really helpful and really, really appreciated.
And we will give you a special personal thank you shout out on the pod.
We will indeed. Well, thank you very much for spending this time with me, Maria Herring. That was good fun.
Thank you very much for spending this time with me, Mr. Bale. It was all right.
Cheerio.
Bye bye.
Thanks for hitting the trails with us this week. We'll meet you back here next Monday for more news, more views, more nature.
All the links for our socials are in the show notes. Find and follow us on Facebook, Insta, YouTube, and Twitter. You can subscribe to our newsletter from our website for all the latest updates and camp plans. You get a fun free gift when you sign up.
Leave a review on your podcast app. It's really easy and really helps us out.
And if you've got any friends who could do with getting out in it, then bring them along to next week's outdoor adventure. We'd love to have you all with us.
Catch you next week. Cheerio.